You can hear the sonic boom there. We begin this hour with a Fox News alert. Residents in our nation's capital were rattled by that sonic boom yesterday. You could see the dog jumping up off the sofa on that back porch after a plane flew into D.C. airspace before crashing in Virginia.
All right, Virginia State Police have called off search efforts after finding no survivors at the scene.
So what was all of that about? Alexandria Huff joins us from the Washington area. And Alexandria, it was in Virginia, it was in Maryland, it was in D.C. where you are. People go, what the heck was that noise?
Yeah, there was a bit of panic, too. You saw it immediately on social media. People captured it on their home cameras. In the D.C. area, there can be reason to be concerned when you hear something like this. And let me say, this is a story that would have been heartbreaking all the same had this plane just simply and quietly crashed in central Virginia. But its pilotless flight path connected thousands who were on the ground. They heard that boom and knew that something had gone wrong. Yeah, some say that it shook their home. According to NORAD, the sound came after F-16 jets were scrambled and authorized to travel at supersonic speeds. The effort was to intercept a private aircraft that had begun to breach Washington, D.C.'s restricted airspace around 3:20 p.m. The pilot of the Cessna Citation was unresponsive, crashing before 4 p.m. again in central Virginia, according to state police. Now here's Fox News' John Scott, who's also a licensed pilot, speaking to the plane's unusual flight path.
It took off from Tennessee. It was supposed to land at MacArthur Airport, which is on New York's Long Island. It actually flew past Long Island, then did a complete U-turn in the air, started heading back to the southwest, flew directly over Washington, D.C. This is just a weird accident. At this moment, Eric, it's as weird to me as Malaysia 370. It's just a mystery what happened.
Here's the really heart-wrenching part. Barbara Rumpel, who owned the plane with her husband John, wrote on Facebook one devastating line here: "My family is gone, my daughter and granddaughter." Virginia State Police confirmed again that there were no survivors. John Rumpel told the New York Times that his granddaughter's nanny was also on board with his granddaughter, who's about 2 years old, his daughter, along with the pilot. Now, he theorized that the plane may have lost cabin pressure, rendering all on board unconscious. Steve, Ainsley, Brian.
That's right. And so it's reminiscent of what happened with Payne Stewart a number of years ago, where there's a little hole apparently in the pressurization and it wasn't perfect. So the military was very quick, Alexandria, to put out, we didn't shoot it down. Essentially, It sounds like it just ran out of gas. It had been on autopilot, apparently.
Yeah, and that's the important part. NORAD was very explicit in explaining we did not shoot this down. Some people who were on the ground said that they had seen what they thought were maybe sparks, shots fired. They said, no, that is not the case. We used flares to try to get the attention of a pilot. In this case, that attention was not able to be had.
What's up, guys? It's your boy, Benny. So we have a crazy story that hit the wires Sunday evening, and it started with people saying they heard a massive boom throughout Washington, D.C. As somebody who lives in Washington, D.C., you sort of live inside of a federal state, and you live inside of a federal state of emergency throughout the entire DMV area, right? So DMV, D.C., Maryland, Virginia, that's what that means. And this area is sort of a federal district, greater overarching Coruscant for the federal government, with these huge cities and sprawling suburbs around it. And there's a lot of military bases. There's a lot of military activity. You always see motorcades and stuff zipping around. DC should be broken up, of course. America was never meant to have a federal city like this. It was never supposed to be a place where people lived or was habitable. That's why they chose a swamp for it, and that's where the swamp comes from. And so there was this big boom and rattled everyone. And as you saw in the preceding news clip there, that boom was jets going supersonic, chasing a private jet that wandered into Virginia. Really weird story here. So sonic boom rattles Washington. Fighter jets chase Cessna. So those sonic booms are massive. And they have to actually give you warnings. On occasion, they go supersonic, and the boom is really loud. And when a jet does that, Sometimes they do it in air shows and stuff, and they have to send warnings out to everyone around to say, like, hey, this is what's happening. I've gotten sent a warning like that because of an air show near Washington, D.C. when I was living there. So you can the booms are so big. I mean, they startle dogs, they rattle homes. A sonic boom that echoed over Washington Sunday caused 2 fighter jets scrambling to intercept an unresponsive aircraft that crashed in Virginia. Residents of the city and its suburbs reported hearing a thunderous noise, rattling windows, shook walls for miles. People are scared that maybe this was like, I don't know, some type of explosion, some type of horrible thing happened. But it was an F-16 fighter jet that got permission to go supersonic in order to intercept a Cessna 560 Citation V aircraft, it's a private jet, over Northern Virginia. Northern American Aerospace Defense Command said in a statement. The 2 jets were scrambled from Andrews Air Force Base. This is right at the southern node of Washington, D.C. there. A Pentagon official said, and they followed the aircraft, subsequently crashed in the mountainous area in southwest Virginia. Nobody survived that crash, tragically. Joe Biden, who was at the White House and also played golf on Sunday, was briefed on the incident. An official journalist said that they didn't specify whether any emergency precautions were taken in the incident. Public records show that the plane was registered to a Florida-based company, Encore Motors of Melbourne. Its owner, John Rumpel, told the Washington Post that his entire family was on board, including his daughters and grandchildren and their nanny. Ugh. We know nothing about the crash, he said. We're talking to the FAA now. I've got to keep the line clear. The civilian plane had taken off from Elizabeth, Tennessee, and was bound for Long Island. The flight tracking website indicated that it had turned around after flying to Long Island, and then it flew back over Washington, which is very scary because you shouldn't have planes flying over Washington. If you fly into Washington, D.C., you'll never actually fly over the city. You always follow sort of a route along the river, the Potomac River there, in order to land. They're very, very cautious, obviously, about jets and planes flying over D.C. Multiple U.S. media reported the crash, and the wreckage has still not been located. So, these supersonic speeds, the NORAD aircraft was authorized to travel supersonic speeds. The sonic boom had been heard by residents in the region. The unresponsive aircraft crashed near Montebello, Virginia. I've actually been there. It's very pretty. So these are prominent Trump donors. His entire family was killed in a plane crash. Presumably this plane was maybe owned by his company. The frequent donor to the NRA and Republican politicians and causes told reporters that he lost several family members. So tragic. John Rumpel, his daughter, his 2-year-old granddaughter, nanny. Flying, man, it's dangerous. Flying private is dangerous. The UK's Daily Mail identified the daughter and reported that the Rumpels had lost their daughter in a scuba diving accident, another daughter in a scuba diving accident when she was only 19. Oh, how awful. Prayers up for the Rumpels. Now, I don't know them. First I've ever read about them or heard of them. But their private jet was intercepted by 2 F-16 jets when it flew through restricted airspace. How could this be where the plane is unresponsive? Well, I mean, if you lose cabin pressure or if there's a gas leak or something inside of the plane, then it might knock the pilots out and all the passengers. And then the plane would essentially be on autopilot. A lot of these planes are essentially flown by computers anyway. And so it may have just like crash landed once it ran out of fuel. So it was supposed to land in Long Island. You can see there, it swoops around Long Island, doesn't land when it should have landed, and then was kind of presumably heading back towards the airport of origin. It's a tragic story. It's tough, and it's obviously very scary. You don't want a plane to crash into a heavily populated area and hurt anyone. But prayers for the Rumpel family. That's the sort of the wrap up of the crazy story you might have seen on Twitter. We felt like it was worthwhile to cover it just because it's something that got ping pong balled around a lot. Big, massive boom right near the United States Capitol. What's that about? Jets going supersonic to catch a private jet that was not responsive and tragically crashed, killing everyone on board. Say a prayer. That's the way it goes. It's your boy Benny. Like, share, and subscribe. See ya.